Secretary to the Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it's a pleasure for me to rise and speak to this bill. Those of you in this House who know me know my passion for the sealing industry and support for Inuit across Canada who depend so heavily upon the sealing industry, as do the people in my riding and those across Atlantic Canada and in Quebec. Mr. Speaker, this bill was brought forward by Senator Céline Havette-Payette, who was a Liberal senator who since has retired from the Senate, but she introduced this bill, an act respecting National Sealed Products Day, and that bill has now made its way to the House of Commons, championed by my colleague from the Coast of Bays in central Notre Dame. Another individual who we know is a very passionate supporter of the sealing industry in Canada. But, Mr. Speaker, this bill will designate May 20th of each year as National Seal Products Day throughout Canada. And National Seal Products Day would not be a legal holiday. However, it would be an opportunity for us to reflect upon the seal, the cultural use of the seal, the sustainability of the seal in our lives in Canada, and how it maintains, Mr. Speaker, its strength, how it maintains its strength for Canadians as a source of food, as a source of craft, as a source of economic sustainability in many regions across the country. I think it's important that we recognize and honour this occasion. In fact, Madam Chair, I, on several occasions, have had the opportunity to host Seal Day on the Hill. This past year, I hosted Seal Day for my colleagues, the members of Parliament, but also for others who were supporters of the seal industry across the country. It was an opportunity for advocates and promoters, for artists and crafters, for Inuit and others to be able to talk about this industry and how this industry is sustaining them as individuals, but also their communities. And so it's important that we continue to do that. Those of you who know me know I'm a strong promoter of the seal industry, and I wear seal nearly every day in one way, shape, or form. But, Madam Chair, I grew up in a small Inuit community in the north. My father was a hunter and a fisherman, and seal was such a large part of the diet of our family. It was our main source of protein as we grew up, but it also was, it brought so much more value besides food sustainability. The seal itself became one of the main products that was used in making clothing, in making things that you would need for the use of outdoors every day, for the use of indoors every day. To this day, my mother is still a crafter of seal product. She makes beautiful designs of product, so we don't waste anything. We have full utilization of seal. Madam Speaker, I don't know if I've ever seen a more sustainable harvest in my entire life as it exists in the sealing industry. Back 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the exploitation of the industry by those who were non-supporters, whose only goal was to set out to sabotage the lifeblood and lifestyles of Inuit and Northerners. And, Madam Chair, they were successful, which was unfortunate. But as Canadians, we're also resilient, and those of us that depended upon this resource to sustain our families, we continued to fight back. And I watched many times as a young girl as my father and my uncles and my brothers all fought those great protesters that would come because they thought that they were barbarians, that they were less than everyone else in the country because they were trying to provide for their family in a very sustainable way. Well, Madam Speaker, the sealing industry is one of the most humane industries in Canada today. Everything about the seal is humane. The way that it is harvested, the way that it is cured, the way that it is utilized, There is no waste. And in fact, Madam Speaker, as my colleague opposite spoke to earlier, it has probably become one of the greatest impediments to fish stock rebuilding in Canada of any other instrumental argument that you could make. As we know, we have an overpopulation of seal because of those protesters, because of the way they tried to erode the lifestyle of Canadians who depended upon this sustainable animal. Madam Speaker, our ecosystem is in a complete imbalance, an imbalance that it has affected the livelihood of other Canadians, especially in Atlantic Canada, especially in Newfoundland and Labrador. The imbalance of the ecosystem has not only been a tremendous impediment in having the rebuilding of our cod stocks, but I live in a region where today I watch seals that go into rivers, that fish for salmon in rivers, something that you would have never heard of 20 years ago. That's because they're starving. Their population is so large that they're starving. They have nothing in the ocean left to eat. We have allowed the ecosystem to have this imbalance within the ocean that is affecting all of the other food supply in the fish that we depend upon. Is that wise? Of course it's not wise. But that's an imbalance that was created by people who did not understand the importance of the seal industry to the people who utilized it. When we fish from the ocean or harvest from the land, Madam Speaker, we do so leaving it in a sustainable way. We don't waste, we utilize. We don't do it for fun, we do it for need as a cultural part of our lives. You go to the Magdalen Islands, you go to Bonavista, you go to St. Anthony, you go to Nain, you go to Kujavak. These are all places around Canada where both Inuit and non-Inuit have used the seal all their lives to sustain their families. Mr. Speaker, it's such an important part of our culture. And it's unfortunate that we've seen the seal banned from the European Union, but I want to say this. I want to say that as devastating as an impact it has been on Indigenous and coastal communities that depend on the seal harvest, we have been working hard to find a way to get our products back into the EU. I want to certainly recognize and commend the Inuit artists and the Inuit Art Council for the work that they've done in building that relationship with the Europeans. And I want to commend them for the show that they've done on Indigenous art and seal products in the European Union just recently. They have made some progress, Mr. Speaker, and now all seal products from Nunavut will have access to the European market, and we are now working with the government of the Northwest Territories to ensure that they too will have that access. Excuse me. So, Madam Speaker, I want to point that out because most people, when they hear about the seal industry, they often hear it from those that are well-funded protest groups that have their own ideology about how the ecosystem and society should work. And their ideology is not based upon cultural values of people who live in Canada. We're a country that respects each other. We respect the cultures of each other. In our culture, Madam Speaker, seal is a very important part of that. It's a part that not only feeds our body and nourishes us, but it's also the part that sustains us economically, and it has been for a long time. To be able to raise the profile of that is important. I remember doing about 5 different shows in promoting the seal industry in Canada, in Montreal, Toronto, and Ottawa, in which we certainly promoted seal products of Inuit people, talked about the seal industry and how it works. And I had so many people coming up to us and wanting to know more, wanting to know what was happening. So, Madam Speaker, I will be supporting this motion. I think it is a good motion, and I would ask my colleagues to recognize the cultural importance of seal and to mark this occasion with myself, my constituents, and all Inuit and others in Canada.